While his armies rest, a young emperor sits by himself in his tent and writes by candlelight. He writes of the everyday battle to master himself rather than conquest or glory, even though he ruled the most powerful empire in history. Action is advanced by the obstacle to action. He writes with care, saying what stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius had no idea that his personal notebooks would inspire millions of people for 2,000 years. He was aware that genuine success, the kind that endures in the face of adversity and difficulty, comes from inside. And he wasn't the only one with this insight. We will uncover 6 ancient secrets of success today, habits so potent that they have changed people's lives for 2 millennia. Before we get started though, I would like to ask you this: have you ever observed how some people appear to be unbreakable while others break under duress? These uncommon people get stronger. What is their trade secret? The solution is found in a philosophy that molded slaves and emperors, a wisdom that transforms challenges into opportunities. I'm not referring to the heartless, icy Stoicism you may have heard of. No, this is the real thing, the pragmatic ideology that has subtly influenced some of the greatest achievers in history. The intriguing thing is that you can discover that highly successful people today, whether they are millionaire business owners, world-class athletes, or trailblazing artists, are unwittingly adhering to these same age-old ideas. The problem is that most people have the opposite idea. They pursue success as if it was something that could be captured. The Stoics had a greater sense. They realized that true success is created from the inside out, by forming daily routines that change one's identity. First habit. Mate. The first habit we'll discuss is hard work, but not in the sense you may expect. In ancient China, picture a young man. He would gaze at a huge mountain close to his village every day. He saw something that others perceived as an impassable barrier. Taking a pickaxe, he started to chip away at the mountain. "You'll never move that mountain," they chuckled. "Not possible. I may not finish in my lifetime, but the mountain is getting smaller every day, while my determination grows stronger," the elderly guy said with a smile. "They will have sons and I have sons." As the story of the stupid old man who moved mountains, the mountain doesn't stand a chance, has been told throughout Chinese history. However, the majority of people overlook the fact that it's not about the mountain. What happens to you when you work on your mountain every day is the main focus. Don't tell me what a man's principles are, said Epictetus, a former slave who went on to become one of the greatest thinkers in history. This is where contemporary hustle culture goes awry. Tell me what he does, and I'll tell you what his principles are. Working oneself to the bone is not the goal. It's about living each day with intention, understanding that every little thing you do changes your situation and your personality. Take a moment to consider that. You're not only working when you take the more difficult route, the early morning, the additional rep, the challenging conversation. Success is not nearly as valuable as what you're creating. You're developing the inner fortitude that ensures victory. Second habit. Let's now discuss patience, the second habit. However, I'm going to tell you a narrative that altered the trajectory of Arabic literature, and you've probably never heard it before. During his early years, Al-Manabi, who is now regarded as one of the finest Arab poets, wandered the Syrian deserts. He was looking for more than simply motivation. The hardest type of patience was being taught to him. He observed how Bedouin tribes managed to thrive in the desert, which is the most hostile environment on earth. He understood that your timeline is irrelevant to the desert. It requires patience not as a virtue but as a survival necessity. Not only did he produce poetry when he wrote his most well-known lines years later, but he also encapsulated a reality about achievement that most people never understand. What was he actually expressing when he said, "The desert knows me well, the night, the mounted men, the battle and the sword, the paper and the pen, you must embrace the waiting, the learning, and the seemingly never-ending preparation if you want to achieve mastery and long-term success. You must realize that hurrying to achieve success frequently leads you farther away from it, just as the desert nomads realized that racing across the dunes would only tire their camels. Generations would be influenced by the letters sent by the renowned Stoic philosopher Seneca. But no good thing renders its possessor happy unless they are prepared to lose it, he wrote in one. Consider that. The patience to lay unshakable foundations is necessary for true success, the type that doesn't keep you living in constant fear of losing it. Examine any success story that happened overnight. If you look closer, you'll discover years of patient preparation. The businessman who appeared out of thin air, they tested and failed for 5 years. The artist who appeared out of nowhere, while everyone else slept, they were honing their skill. The secret, however, that most people overlook is that patience is not passive. Sitting around hoping for success is not the answer. It's about enjoying the journey of self-discovery. It's about realizing that every ability you develop, every connection you make, and every little victory you achieve add up to something bigger than you could have ever dreamed. For this, the Stoics used a potent visualization technique. They would picture time as a river that flows continuously. The water cannot be grabbed and made to move more quickly, but it can be navigated with stronger vessels, better instruments, and a greater understanding to work with it rather than against it. What if, instead of impeding your success, everything you're going through, the difficulties, the failures, the seemingly sluggish progress, is setting you up for a degree of achievement you couldn't manage without this preparation? Keep in mind that steel is hardened by the same heat that melts butter. Your obstacles are not your adversaries. In the end, they are the instruments that are shaping you into a person who can maintain success. Third habit. Let's discuss sacrifice, which is something that most success gurus deliberately ignore. The third characteristic that distinguishes dreamers from Stoic achievers. A young samurai who wanted to know the secret of success sought out a Zen teacher, according to an old Japanese legend. He was invited to tea by the master. The master continued to pour tea into the samurai's cup while they sat. The master continued to pour tea even until the cup filled and eventually overflowed. It poured all over. The samurai finally broke their silence and said, "Master, the cup is overflowing." The master halted the pouring and grinned, saying, "No more will go in. You are so full of your own thoughts, aspirations, and wants that you resemble this cup. Without emptying your cup first, how can you learn?" This narrative is about the essential fact of sacrifice that every truly successful person finds, and it's not only about learning. You have to give up something in order to make room for something new. Take a minute to consider Epictetus's wise words. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Are you prepared to give up your comfort zone, to seem dumb while learning, to trade who you are now for the person you might become? This is where most people make mistakes with sacrifice, though. They believe it involves letting go of things they cherish. No, that isn't it. Loving something else more is the essence of true sacrifice. The key is to have such a clear idea of what you want to become that it becomes easy to let go of things that don't matter. Let me tell you a tale from ancient Africa that aptly illustrates this. Mansa Musa, the richest person in human history, was a king who ruled Mali. However, he was a student of wisdom prior to becoming king. One of the lessons he learned from his professors influenced his life. A bird that wants to fly high must first let go of the branch. Consider that. It's not an awful branch. It's actually safe and comfy. But you won't realize how high you can fly if you never let go of it. In fact, current evidence supports this. Our brains are hardwired to cling to what we have, according to research. We refer to it as the endowment effect. Just because something is ours, we value it more. In the past, this made sense for survival, but in the present, it frequently prevents us from achieving more. The Stoics had a profound understanding of this. Get rid of the judgment, Get rid of the "I am hurt," and you get rid of the hurt itself, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal. He was referring to emotional sacrifice, or letting go of the self-deprecating narratives that keep us tiny. Let's be realistic though. For you now, what does this mean? It implies that being clear about what you're prepared to give up is necessary for success. Perhaps it's the convenience of sleeping in. It can be the security of an overgrown job. Since they never genuinely attempt, it can be the identity of the person who never fails. The Stoics would pose this potent query: what are you clinging to that is preventing you from moving forward? Fourth habit. Iris. Without constancy, sacrifice only brings about fleeting change. However, when you combine the two, magic occurs. The growth of bamboo is the subject of an intriguing old Chinese legend. After planting, nothing grows above ground for the first 4 years. As the bamboo develops a complex underground root system, the farmer must continuously water and care for the seemingly empty soil. The bamboo then abruptly grows 90 feet in just 6 weeks during the 5th year. The dilemma is whether the bamboo grew 90 feet in 5 years or 6 weeks. This is the point at which most people's comprehension of consistency falls short. The 4 years of steady, undetectable growth beneath the surface are not visible to them, so they consider the sprouting bamboo shoot to be a miracle. In an unexpected metaphor, Zeno, the originator of Stoicism, explained this idea by comparing philosophy and, by extension, any quest for greatness, to a lush field that yields steady, dependable food rather than a garden full of lovely flowers. Modern neuroscience has demonstrated that consistency literally changes the structure of your brain, which is remarkable. Myelination, which is similar to paving a dirt road in your head, is the process by which you fortify neural connections each time you do an activity. The road gets faster and smoother the more you use it. Despite their ignorance of neurology, the Stoics were able to discern this reality by observation. Practice makes habit stronger, and more practice makes habit stronger, according to Musonius Rufus, the Roman Socrates. He stressed that excellence is a habit developed through innumerable repetitions rather than an act. Native American tradition contains a profound narrative about consistency. An elder tells his grandson about 2 wolves that struggle inside each person. One symbolizes courage, kindness, and perseverance, while the other represents fear, anger, and self-doubt. The elder responds to the grandson's question regarding which wolf prevails by saying, "The one you feed consistently." This leads us to an important distinction about consistency that most people overlook. It's about perseverance, not perfection. The Stoics had a practice known as returning to the path. They acknowledged that they might occasionally deviate from their beliefs, but the important thing was to constantly get back up after falling. Imagine water moving down a mountain. It never stops on its way to its destination, because it adapts and flows around obstacles rather than in a straight line. This is a true example of consistency. This leads us to a profound truth about consistency. It's not just about doing the same things, it's about becoming the same person. Your best self, regardless of circumstances. Epictetus put it beautifully: don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. The times when you are most consistent are when you are worn out, when you are feeling depressed, and when no one is looking. You either develop the habit of keeping your word to yourself, or you break it every day. Every time you make a commitment and keep it, you're not only completing a task but also developing your character. Relying on yourself is the first step towards becoming a trustworthy person. Continuous development through modest, consistent actions is known as kaizen in Japanese culture. However, the Japanese also have a deeper notion called dinari, which is the skill of simplifying your life so that you can concentrate on what's really important. Combining these concepts with Stoic wisdom yields a potent understanding that consistency is about doing the correct things consistently with complete focus and concentration, not about doing more things. As we conclude this part on consistency and sacrifice, consider this: what one modest action, carried out regularly, will change your life in the coming year. What would you have to give up in order to achieve that consistency? Keep in mind that the road to spectacular success is paved with regular investments in your chosen course, made on everyday days. Fifth habit. Not as disciplined as you might assume, but disciplined nonetheless. The Stoics had a deeper understanding of discipline than contemporary self-help frequently does. Allow me to tell you an ancient Greek tale that aptly illustrates this. Odysseus' arduous homeward journey following the Trojan War is likely familiar to you, but one aspect of his tale is especially significant to us today. Odysseus accomplishes something extraordinary when he passes the island of the Sirens, whose mesmerizing sounds have enticed innumerable sailors to perish. He makes his crew bind him to the mast and put wax in their ears rather than depending solely on willpower. He establishes a system of discipline that practically eliminates failure. This was intelligence, not weakness. The goal of proper discipline is to create methods and situations that make achievement nearly inevitable, not to constantly strive. In his words, no man is free who is not master of himself. The intriguing thing about the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was enslaved at one point in his life and became one of the greatest teachers in history, is that he taught that mastery comes from knowing and working with your nature rather than from constantly fighting it. Think about the tale of Pythagoras' daughter Damo. She was given her father's manuscripts upon his death, with the stipulation that she would never sell them. "I would rather die in poverty obeying my father's wishes than sell them for any price." She lived in poverty but protected them throughout her life. This wasn't simply obstinate resolve, it was a deep sense of purpose that made discipline second nature. This is what modern psychology refers to as choice architecture, organizing your surroundings such that wise choices are the norm. 2,000 years ago, the Stoics were engaged in this practice. In order to reduce the temptation to sleep in, Marcus Aurelius wrote about setting his bed on the floor. He was eliminating the alternative completely, not resisting his need for comfort. The majority of people, however, misunderstand discipline because they believe it to be about saying no and imposing restrictions. Saying yes to something greater is the essence of true discipline. It all comes down to having a vision that is so inspiring that it propels you ahead rather than requiring you to exert yourself. The archer Yi, who practiced for years, is the subject of an old Chinese legend. A question was posed to him one day: what if you miss the target? A master archer is not concerned with hitting the target, Yes retorted. He is focused on developing his form, because when it is perfected, hitting the target comes naturally. True discipline is the organic result of consistent practice rather than the forced march of willpower. When you realize this, discipline becomes liberation rather than punishment. However, the Stoics also recognize that discipline is important for success because it involves managing reactions as well as acts. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters, Epictetus stated. This is mental discipline, which is vastly more effective than simple physical discipline. Sixth habit. Self-assurance, but not the flimsy kind found on contemporary social media. We are discussing something far more profound, what the Stoics referred to as self-sufficiency, the unwavering awareness of your value and potential. Allow me to introduce you to Zainab al-Ghazali, an Egyptian activist from the 20th century who was imprisoned for years due to her views. She remembered the Prophet Yusuf's statement, "Even in prison, my Lord has made it good for me," during her darkest hours. This was not naive optimism, but rather a deep sense of self-confidence founded on the knowledge that your value is not defined by your circumstances or your potential is not constrained by them. This fact would have been acknowledged by the Stoics. Seneca once said, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." True self-confidence isn't about believing you'll always succeed, rather, it's about knowing you'll be all right even if you don't. Take a time to consider this. Most people base their confidence on their accomplishments, yet genuine, long-lasting confidence comes from owning up to your mistakes and recognizing that they didn't break you. You're not only going back to where you were before each time you fall and get back up, you're also developing more resilient confidence. Kintsugi, the technique of using gold to heal broken pottery, is a potent Japanese idea. Not only is it fixed, but the finished product is more exquisite and priceless than the original. True self-confidence looks like this. Your difficulties and setbacks are the gem that makes you special and precious, not defects to be concealed. What most people fail to realize, though, is that self-confidence is a habit that is developed via tiny acts of bravery rather than a sensation that is waited for. You gain confidence by acting confidently. Your confidence grows every time you confront fear, speak your mind, or refuse to back down. To develop this kind of confidence, the Stoics would often live in poverty, willingly forgoing things that they could afford. But why? Because you no longer dread the worst once you know you can manage it. You gain unwavering confidence.